Many years ago, in a forgotten village surrounded by dark forests and endless fog, there lived a beautiful young woman named Eliza, who was preparing for her wedding day. The entire village celebrated her marriage because she was known for her kindness, beauty, and gentle heart. But on the night of her wedding, something horrifying happened. Her groom mysteriously disappeared before the ceremony, leaving her alone inside the old church while a violent storm covered the sky. Heartbroken and humiliated, Eliza ran through the village crying, uncontrollably, before suddenly vanishing near the graveyard at the edge of the forest. The next morning, villagers discovered her lifeless body beside an ancient grave covered in strange symbols. Nobody knew what truly happened that night, but from that moment, terrifying events began haunting the village forever. Years passed, and the story slowly turned into a dark legend whispered by frightened villagers after sunset. People claimed they could hear a woman crying near the cemetery every midnight. Others said they saw a ghostly bride walking between the graves, wearing a torn wedding dress stained with blood and mud. Her pale face looked almost human, but her glowing red eyes and unnatural smile filled everyone with fear. Those who looked directly into her eyes were never seen again. The villagers called her the bride from the grave. Parents warned their children never to go near the cemetery after dark, and travelers avoided the cursed road completely. One cold October night, 5 young content creators traveled to the abandoned village, hoping to record a horror documentary for their channel. They laughed at the ghost stories and believed the legends were only created to scare outsiders. Armed with cameras, flashlights, and confidence, they entered the village despite repeated warnings from an old man sitting near the entrance bridge. The old man looked terrified as he whispered, "Leave before midnight. Once she sees you, she never lets you go." But the group ignored him and continued toward the graveyard. As the night grew darker, strange things started happening around them. Their cameras began glitching, batteries drained without reason, and distant whispers echoed through the foggy air. One of the friends noticed footprints in the mud that looked like bare feet, mixed with marks from a wedding dress, dragging across the ground. Suddenly, the church bell rang loudly, even though the church had been abandoned for decades. The sound echoed across the empty village, like a warning from another world. The group finally reached the ancient cemetery, hidden behind dead trees and broken stone walls. In the center stood a massive grave covered with black roses and old chains. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, and the air around it felt freezing cold. One of the boys jokingly touched the grave and laughed, challenging the spirit to appear. At that exact moment, the wind stopped completely. Every sound disappeared. Even the insects fell silent. Then, slowly, the grave began to shake. Cracks spread across the stone as dirt rose into the air. The chains snapped violently, one after another. A horrifying scream exploded from beneath the ground, causing the travelers to fall back in terror. Then a pale hand emerged from the grave. Slowly, a terrifying woman crawled out, wearing a rotting white wedding dress soaked in blood. Her long black hair covered most of her face, but her glowing eyes burned through the darkness like fire. Her jaw moved unnaturally as if her bones were broken, and a twisted smile stretched across her face while she whispered in a soft voice, "Have you seen my groom?" The group panicked and ran through the cemetery, but the fog became thicker with every step. No matter where they ran, they somehow returned to the same grave again and again. One by one, the friends began disappearing into the darkness after hearing Eliza's crying voice calling their names. One boy followed the sound of a woman sobbing behind a tombstone, only to vanish seconds later with a horrifying scream. Another girl saw her dead reflection, smiling inside an old mirror hanging from a tree, before being dragged into the shadows by invisible hands. As the survivors struggled to escape, they discovered old documents inside the ruined church, revealing the horrifying truth. Eliza's groom had secretly sacrificed her during a forbidden ritual to gain wealth and immortality. But the ritual failed, cursing both the village and Eliza's restless soul forever. Consumed by betrayal, pain, and darkness, she transformed into a vengeful spirit who hunts anyone entering her graveyard after midnight. The curse grew stronger with every soul she captured. Meanwhile, the remaining travelers realized they were no longer alone. Shadowy figures stood silently between the graves, watching them from the fog. These were the trapped souls of previous victims, their hollow eyes filled with endless terror. The cemetery itself seemed alive, twisting pathways and moving tombstones to trap anyone trying to leave. Every direction led deeper into darkness. Thunder roared across the sky as rain poured heavily over the cursed graveyard. The final survivor desperately tried to escape through the forest while hearing the bride's footsteps slowly approaching behind him. He reached the village bridge and thought he was finally safe, until he saw Eliza standing directly in front of him. Her face was now horribly disfigured, her mouth stretched open unnaturally wide, and worms crawled through her torn wedding veil. She slowly raised her hand toward him and whispered, "You cannot leave me alone." The next morning, police arrived after receiving reports of missing tourists. They found abandoned cameras scattered throughout the graveyard. Still recording. The final footage showed the terrified survivors screaming and running through the fog before the screen, suddenly filled with the smiling face of the ghost bride standing impossibly close to the camera. Then the video ended with complete silence. To this day, villagers claim that on stormy nights, the ghostly bride still walks among the graves, searching for new souls. Some say, if you hear wedding bells ringing near the old cemetery after midnight, it means she has chosen her next victim. And if you ever see a pale woman in a torn wedding dress standing alone in the fog, never answer when she asks, "Have you seen my groom?" Because the moment you speak to her, your soul belongs to the grave forever.